one. How am I sounding, everyone?
Just don't sing. You sounded great.
Thanks, Howie. Okay.
Rabbi, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Can you do El Mali Rachamim on a Friday night?
Um, the vast opinion is that you don't do it on Shabbat in general, but sometimes people make exceptions, depending on the circumstance. I mean, Sephardim, I think, generally do. Why? Did you need Emily Rachamim for someone?
Well, next Friday is my today is my actual English your site, but next Friday is the next Friday night.
We'll do it. So
No,
you-
no, no. No, let me mention because I would try to get many of my family members on next Friday night. So I was wondering if
We'll do it. For you, Howie, we'll do it. Okay?
only if it's appropriate. I
No,
mean,
it's fine. I think, the camp is Sephardi, so I don't think he'll mind. But, I think that's one thing in return. I want you
Yeah,
to...
I'm staying, Rabbi, 10 on continent, 40 minutes of anything is enough.
I want you to hear my Devar Torah. I think you're going to like it.
I'll take it and I'll listen to it in the next 40 minutes. Rabbi, I got a better idea. Rabbi,
Yeah.
do your Devar Torah now and I'll hear it.
And we don't got the majority of people on. We're going to start in 1 minute, though. Let's see, who's on? We're going to start in 1 minute. We got Jason Katz. Jason! Boker Tov, good morning.
Boker Tov.
You did such a great job, by the way. Any chance you want to lead us in Gerchot HaShachar and Pesuki de Zimra?
Not this morning,
All right.
but another morning, I'd love to.
All right, I'm going to do it then.
I wanted to talk on that. Let me see if it echo.
All right, how am I sounding? Am I echoing?
Perfect.
Yeah, sound all right? I would start in 1 minute. Everyone, get your Sidorim. Okay. Good to go. All right, how are you, Robert? No. He heard you were going to be here, so he didn't want to come in. We begin on page 65 with Birchot HaShachar. Please rise and respond Amen after each and every bracha. Howie, sorry, you're just going to have to listen to my voice for the next several minutes. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher netan l'salviv v'na'alem chen beinu v'bein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzalmaho. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorihin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pakeach ivrihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam al bisharu mihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atir asurihin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zakef kefufihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rakaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasei likot sarkihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamichlim mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam azer Yisrael b'gvuraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ater Yisrael b'tifaraha. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam haten layev koach. You may be seated. We continue silently to the bottom of the page. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam. ונהנה היום במחול יום החיים וחסרח מבינך ובין הרקוננו ותקמלנו חסדים טובים ברוך אתה אדוני גם בחסדים טובים לעמו ישראל יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אהבותה שתצילנו היום ובכל יום מעזי פנים ומזוג פנים מדם רע ומחרבי רע ומסכן רע ומגפי רע ומשטן המשחי בין קשה בין בל דין קשה בין שהוא ואין ברית ובין שאינו ואין ברית ריבון כל העולמים לא על צדקתנו אנחנו מפילים תחתנו לפניך כי על רחמך רבים לפיכך אנחנו חייבים להודות לך, לשבחך, לברכך, ולברך, לקדש, לתת שבח בהודיה לשמרך. אשרינו מצבך, קינו מנים גורלנו, מה יפה שתנו, אשרינו שנקם שמקם ימי ערבים, ערב בוקר ורמים פעמם בכל יום. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד, אתה הוא שנברא העולם, אתה משמר העולם, אתה בעולם הזה ואתה לעולם הבא, קדש את שמך מקדש שמך, וקדש את שמך מברך, שתך תרים ותגבה קרננו, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש את שמך רבים, אתה הוא עד השמיים ובארץ. ויהי אתכם, ויקצבי אתכם, כי אתן אתכם לשם ותלי בכל הארץ, בשבכם, בניכם אמר אדוני. Page 70, רבי ישמעאל אמר בשלושת תורה מידות התנא דרשה, מקל וכל מגרזו שם, מדין אמת גנוחה, מדין דמת שני כתוב, מכלל פרט ומפרט וכלל. דבר הלמד מנרו, דבר הלמד מסופו, וכן שני כתובים המחשים זה את זה שבו הכתוב השש קוריין מהם. יהי רצון בפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואבותינו, שתן חלקנו בתורתך, ונמליט על מיטל שלום וכהן, אוהב שלום ורודף שלום, אוהב את הבריאות, מור קרבן, לתורה. All right, how many people do we have on? Oh, we've got our meeting. Okay, so Kaddish de Rabbanan, page 71, all those in mourning observing a yard site, please rise and join me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach erutei v'yamlich machutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'me'ol maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudashah, brechu, le'ela, min kol, birchata, v'shirata, tushbachata, v'nechamata, damiran, be'alma, v'yimeru, amen. Al Yisrael, v'al Rabbanan, v'al Tamidehon, v'al kol Tamidehon, v'al kol mandeskim, v'araita, divatara, hadein, v'di b'chol atar, v'atar, yehel n'chlon, shlama, china, v'chista, v'rachamin, V'chayin arichin u'mizona revicha, u'forkana min kadam avuhon di v'shmaya v'imeru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim tovim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu v'rachamav yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, amen. Page 72. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh Shabbat Hamim V'Reit HaMikdash Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat Tov L'Adon L'Adonai L'Mezer Shemcha L'Yon L'Hagi B'Bocher Chastecha B'Murcha B'Leilot Alei Asor V'Alei Novel Alei HaKinyon B'Chinor. Sadi katama yifra, keres bavanon yiske, shetulim bevet Adonai, bechatzot Elohin yafrichu, od yanuvun beseva, teshenim raninim yiyu, lahagid ki yashar Adonai, tsori v'lo blata boho. Page 81. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. Hafata misbedil amocholi, pitakta sakita azain simcha, lamani zamecha chavo v'lo yidom, Adonai Elohai leolam, odeka. Mourner's Kaddish, page 82. Yitgadal v'yitkadash me'rabah, be'alma divrach erutei v'yamlich machutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kari v'imeru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach leolam u'me'ol maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah brechu le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imeru, amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imaru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imaru Amen. We rise, page 83, for the section known as Pesukei Zimra, with Baruch Shemar. Baruch Shemar v'haya olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Oseh v'reishihi, Baruch Omer v'yoseh, Baruch Gozer u'mirkayehem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriyohot, Baruch meshalem sachatov l'reyahav, Baruch hala'av v'kayam la'netzach, Baruch podeh u'matzihil, Baruch shemaho, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ha'el ha'barach haman, ha'mula b'fi amo, meshubach u'mfa'ar b'lshon chasidav avidav, v'shirei David avdecha nehalelcha Adonai Eloheinu b'shimcho mizimrot, B'ngaldelcha neshabechacha nefarecha v'naskir shimcha v'lumichacha malcheinu Eloheinu, Yachichei holami, melech b'shubach v'vardei et shemo hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulal, batishbachot. You may be seated. Page 96, Ashrei. Ashrei Yoshrei Beitecha Ojalu Chasela. Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo. Ashrei ha'am shadonai Elohav. Tehillah LeDavid. פותח את ידיך ומצביע לכל חרצות, צדיק נא בכל דרכיו וחסיד בכל מעשיו, קרוב נא לכל קרוב לכל אשר קרוב אמת, רצון יביא יעשה ואת שבתם ישמע וישיים, שומר אדוני כל אוהביו וקרשים ישמיד, תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. Page 100. Aliyah Shilona Shir Chadash. Lasor malchehem zikmim nichabdechem l'chavel barzel. Lasor bahem mishpach katuv. Hadol l'chol chasidav. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Hallel Pekadsho, Hallel Birkio Zoho, Hallel Bigurutav, Hallel Kurov Gulaho, Hallel Beteka Shofar, Hallel Benema Vechinor, Hallel Betofu Machol, Hallel Beminim Vugav, Hallel Betzil Tzele Shema, Hallel Betzil Tzele Trua, Kolan Shamata Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Kolan Shamata Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Amen Amen. Baruch Adonai Mitzion Shem Chushalayim. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elhei Yisrael Asit Niflo V'Doro V'Vruk Shem Kivadol Olam Yimelei V'Chol Koto Aretz. Amen V'Amen. We rise top of 101. V'Yivarech David Et Adonai V'Lenei Kol Kahal V'Yomer David Baruch Atah Adonai Elhei Yisrael Avinu Me'olam V'Ad Olam. Atahu Adonai Elohim Asher Bacharta B'Avam V'Sitei Mor Kasdim Santa Shemo Avraham U'Matzatei Levano Ma'anan Lefanecha V'Charot Imo Habri L'Teita Tertakani Hachiti Hamor V'Vasi V'Vasi V'Kashi L'Teit L'Zvero Tegavar Sekatikata V'Hayam Bakata Livneim V'Yu B'Tocha Yom Yibasha Edrafem Hishlach Mitzlo Kamo Evan B'Mayim Azihim V'Yosha Adonai B'Yom HaHu Yisrael Miyam Yitzrayim V'Ya Yisrael Meit Mitzrayim Meit Asfat Hayam V'Ya Yisrael Et HaYed Gedola Asher Sadonai B'Mitzrayim V'Yumam Adonai V'Yaminu B'Adonai U'Moshe Avdaho Az Yashir Moshe V'nei Yisrael Tashir Azel V'nei Mor Ashir L'Adonai Ki Golga Sus V'Rufurma V'Yam Ozi V'Zimrat Yav Ayli Lishua Zeli V'Anvehu Elohei Avim Ramehu Adonai Yishmel Chama Adonai Shemot. Mikdash Adonai konanu yadecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Ki l'Adonai hamlucha, Moshel b'goyim, v'lo moshim b'har tzion l'shpot et harisav, V'hita Adonai hamlucha, V'hay Adonai melech al kol haaretz, B'yom Adonai echad, Ushemo echad. You may be seated. We continue at the top of page 104, Nishmat Kol Chai. Nishmat kol chai, tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Nahalecha, Neshebechacha, Nevarecha, Nevarech et Shem Kodshecha, Kamor, LaDavid Baruchi Nafshi et Adonai, V'chol Kravai et Shem Kodsheho. Ha'el b'ta'atzumot uhuzecha, Hagadol bichvot shimecha, Hagibor lanetzach v'hanar b'norotecha, Hamelch ha'yoshev al kisei ram, v'nisaha. Okay, Josh Ratner, are you on? Josh Ratner? Oh, sorry. Josh Ratner, are you on?
Rabbi, do you want me to take over?
Well, I was going to ask Josh. I don't see him yet. I don't know if he's on. I know you want you're doing Haftarah Musaf, so maybe Jordan wants to do Shafari?
I don't see him. Oh, Jordan's on, yeah.
Dr. Pritzker? Patient Dr. Pritzker? All right, John. How about you? You could do Shafari. I know you've done it before.
Can I pass?
All right, you guys are going to have to listen to me, Doc, some more then.
Well, good.
All right, as long as you're sure. We continue in the middle of page 105. Shochenan maharom v'kadoho shemaho v'chatuv rananu tzadikim b'adonai l'sharim navatihila b'fi yisharim titalal divrei tzadikim titbarach v'ilshon chasidim titramam v'kerev kedoshim titkadash uv'machalot revivot amcha beit Yisrael Brinit Pair Shimcha Makein Machol Dovardor Shekain Chovat Kol Hayitzurim Lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Levoteinu Ladol El Shabeach Lefarei Laramim Lader Levarech Lelei Lekayes Al Kol Divrei Shiro Petish Bachot David Ben Yishai Avdecha Mishichecha. We rise top of page 106. Yishtabach Shimcha Leyad Malkeinu Ha'el Hamel Hagadol B'Yifon. Brachova Odo Me'atavi Adolam Baruch Atah Adonai El Melech Gadol B'Tishbachot El Ha'odod Adonai Haniflot Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Melech Elchei Ha'olam Mihi. Middle of 106. Yitkadal V'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divrach Irtei V'Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon uv'yamechon uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izmahan karif v'imeru amen Yehi shmei Rabba mivorach le'olam le'ol me'ol maya yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudashah brechu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata dahamihiran be'alma v'yimeru. Amen. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yosef v'choshech Oseh Shalom uvarei et HaKol. You may be seated, middle of 107. HaKol Yaducha v'chol Yishim. Ein kirchecha ve'enzelotecha v'spiltecha u'midai malach. Ein kirchecha Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh ve'enzelotecha makenu l'chai ha'olam habaha. Efespiltecha go'aleinu limot hamashiach ve'en domeh lecha l'moshienu l'tchiat ha'metihim. Page 108. El Adonai kol hamasim baruch umvorach v'fi kol nishama gadlo v'tuvo ma'alei olam da'at udvuna sovavimoto hamit ga'el achayot hakodesh v'nedar bechavo al hamerkava zechut umishor lifnei chiso Chesed v'rachamim lifnei kivodo tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'dat b'vina uv'haskel koach ugvura natan bahem liot moshlim b'kerev tevel melim ziv ufif kim noga na'e zivam b'chol ha'olam smechim b'tzetam v'sasim b'voam osim be'em aretz konam pe'er v'chavo notnim lishmot sahala verina lezecher malchuto kara lashemesh vayizrach ora v'hit kin sorat halvana shevach notnim lo kol tzeva marom Tiferet u'gedula srafim v'yofanim v'chayot ha'kodesh Le'el asher ben. Tiparach Moshe al Shevach Masayadecha V'amor Yashitag Verucha Sela. Top of 110. Tiparach Soreinu Malkeinu V'goelenu Barei Kiddushim Ishtabach Shimcha Liad Malkeinu. Kulam Ovim, Kulam Bivarim, Kulam Kivarim, Kulam Esayim Emira, Redak, Ratzon Konam, Kulam Pedichim Bihem B'Kedevshtav, Torah, B'Shirav Zimram, Farchim Shamchim, Umaritzim, Umakritzim, Umakdishim, Umamlichim, Et Shem Ha'el, HaMelech HaGadol, HaGibon HaKadoshu, V'chulam Mikablim, Alehem, Ol Machut Shemaim Zemizeh, V'num Shelazeh, Lakdish, Natan, V'nach HaRuach, B'Safa Nivra, Nima Kedosha, Kulam Kechad, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Meloch HaKol Haaretz, Givodoho, V'hofanim, V'chayot HaKodesh, Baras Gadol, Minasim Lat Sarfim, Lumatam Shapchim V'omrim, Baruch Kivod Adonai, Mim Komo, La'el Baruch Nimoti Teinu, L'melech Elcha V'kayam, Zemiro, Yomeru V'tishbecho Yashmiu, Kihu Levado, Poel Givurot, Oseh Chadashot, Pa'al Milchamot, Zereyat Tzedakot, Matzmiach Yishuot, Barei Rifot, Norati Hilot, Adon HaNiflaot, HaMechadesh B'tovo, B'chol Yom Tamid Maseh V'reshit, Kamor Laseh Oreim Gedolim, Ki L'olam Chasdo, Or Chadash Al Tzion Ta'ir, Or Chadash Al Tzion Ta'ir, V'nizkech Ulanu Mehera Leoro, Mehera Leoro, Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzeh HaMeoroho. Page 111. Ahava Rabba V'tah Adonai Eloheinu, Chem Laki Tolav Timatach. V'hernenu b'toratecha v'dabech libeinu b'mitzvotecha v'yachei levavenu liyahava l'reya et shemecha v'lo nevosh le'olam va'ed v'lo nevosh le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha hagadol v'hanora b'hatachnu nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha v'havienu l'shalom e'abar kanfot ha'aretz etolichenu komiyu le'artzenu ki el poel Yeshuotata uvan uvacharta mikolam v'lavshon v'keiraftanu l'shimcha hagadol sela b'emet lahodot l'chal yechecha b'yahava baruch atah Adonai habocher b'amo Yisrael b'yahava Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, B'shivtecha, b'veitecha, v'lachtecha, v'aderech, u'shoch b'cha, v'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'v'hisharecha, v'haim shemot shemot. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe lemor, Daber al bnei Yisrael, ve'amarta lehem, v'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei vigdehem, l'doratam, v'natnu, al tzitzit kanaf b'til techelet, v'haya lachem, l'tzitzit, doritem oto, uzkartem ekol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam, V'lo taturu acharei levavchem, ve'acharei nechem, asher temzonim achareihem, Leman tizkeru v'asitem kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai lechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet Emet Elohei Elohim L'dorvato hu kayam u'shmo kayam v'chisto nachon v'choto amunato l'ad kayam Emet shata Adonai Eloheinu v'lavotenu malkeinu melech avotenu go'aleinu go'el avotenu yirtzenu yisrosh avotenu podenu melatzleinu melam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam agenu l'shem nechem erchaim b'chol v'dorvato Tilol elyon baruchum varach Moshe v'nei Yisrael chanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha be'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef eleh shira chadasha shipchu geulim leshimcha safat hayam yachad kulam hodu v'himlichu v'yamru Adonai yimloch leolam vaed. Sor Yisrael, kuma bezrat Yisrael, b'dechnemecha Yehuda v'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzot shemo, kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Gaal Yisrael. We rise, page 115b, as we begin the Amidah together, the standing portion of the service. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor B'Hanara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot U'Mevi Goel V'nei V'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer U'Foked U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ufoked Sarah, atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayim itim atavrav loshia, Mashiv haruach, Omarid hagah Hashem, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayim metim berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech holim, Umatir asurim, Umekahayehem emunato lishenei afar michamocha ba'al givurot umido mehelach melech memihit umechahayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atah lahachayot metim Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hametim. Nekadesh et Shemcha ba'olam, Kashem shemakdishim ato b'shmei marom, kakatu v'ayad nevi'echa v'karazel ze v'yamar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvaot, melocho kol haaretz givodoho. Az b'kol ra'as gadol, adir chazach mashmim kol, matnusim lo matzarafim, lumatam baruch yomeru. Baruch Adonai mimkomo makenu tofiat v'timloch aleinu ki machlakim anachnu lach matai timloch b'tzion b'karav b'yameinu le'olam va'ed tishkon titgadal v'titkadash b'tof Yerushalayim yircha l'dor v'dor l'netzach netzachim ve'enu tirena malchutecha k'davar ha'amor k'bishrei huzecha al yudei David Mashiach tzidkecha. Yimloch Adonai le'olam al ha'ar Tzion l'dor v'dor, hallelujah. L'dor v'dor nor gid god lechol netzach netzachim t'shachan nakdish v'shivchachem al himen apino lo yom l'ishlam v'ed kil mel kadov v'kadosh ata baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. We continue down silently in the Hebrew and English through page 120. Modim anachnu lach. Oseh shalom u'mirav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. We continue Kaddish Shalem, page 138. Yidkral v'yikadash shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrach eretev yamlich malchuteh b'chayachot u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'gala v'zman kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach Leolam, leol maya, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yipar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadav, v'yitalev, v'yitalal shmei dekudasha, brechu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imeru, amen. Titkal batzlo tahon v'oton d'chol Yisrael, kadam avahon divishmaya v'imeru, amen. Yehi shlam araba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, amen. If you're not muted, please join in singing with me. Ahoseh shalom b'imromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yahaseh shalom, shalom ya'aseh, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. We're going to pause for a moment. We're not going to be doing the Torah reading this Shabbat morning. We only have one person in synagogue aside from myself, Robert Yagana, not counting how many people are joining us virtually. But I will just take a moment and explain a synopsis of the Torah reading. It's called Bishalach, and this is the scene by which the Israelite nation finally leaves Egypt and they cross the Sea of Reeds. Of course, we know the famous scene. We remember it from the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, or any countless anecdotal tales we were told as children in Hebrew school or at the Pesach Seder. Moshe Rabbeinu raising his staff, the Sea of Reeds splitting, two columns on either side, and the Israelite nation descending in the mist below, making it to the other side just before the waters themselves close in, collapse on the pursuant Egyptian army, Pharaoh's chariots, drowning them in the process. So it seems that the Israelites are free to continue now on their journey, finally as free people, no longer pursued by their slave owners, their oppressors. And there's a couple of more scenes where they start to complain against Moses because they come to a place called Mei Meribah, the waters of bitterness. And not the first time they complain against Moses, it won't be the last, but he throws a piece of wood into the water, making it less bitter, more drinkable, more potable, and the Israelites are able to partake, and they come to a place called Elim where they see all these palm trees and an oasis. They're able to enjoy themselves. They continue on their journey, and it's this particular parsha where manna falls from the sky. They complain about not having enough food to sustain them, and God causes this man, this heavenly treat to fall every morning. And when the Israelites go to gather it, it's said it's like honey on wafers. It resembles the coriander seed, and they can't collect it and take it home because it spoils very quickly, but they could eat it that day to sustain themselves. And on Shabbat, actually before Shabbat on Friday, a double portion falls, and the Israelites are able to keep it for Shabbat because none falls on Shabbat itself. The first of many restrictions that we learn about, but the idea being that God doesn't want the Israelite nation to go out and gather, hoard on Shabbat. One of the reasons to this day we have the custom of a double loaves of challah on Shabbat at the dinner table, both Friday night and some people for Saturday lunch as well, 2 loaves of challah. So we see the beginnings of their journey in the desert and the fact that God will provide for them. There's also a scene, of course, where they do battle with the Amalekites, and Moses, sitting on a rock overlooking the battle, holds up his hands. Every time he holds up his hands, the Israelites are victorious against the Amalekites. Every time he lowers his hands, because he gets tired, the Amalekites start to prevail, and his brother Aaron and Hor, who's most likely his brother-in-law, hold up his hands, because now, of course, we know the solution. His hands just have to remain withheld the entire time. The Israelites prevail over the Amalekites, and God says, do not forget what they did from generation to generation. You're to engaged in war with the Amalekites. This story will be recounted 40 years later when the Israelites are getting ready to leave the land, and they're reminded, wipe out the Amalekites. Don't forget what they did to you. They're troublemakers, and blot out their name. Of course, the story of Purim, which is coming up in a month, Haman was descended from this Amalekite nation. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to say a bracha for all those in our community who are sick or ailing. And I'm going to pause briefly in the Hebrew. If you have the name of someone who you know is sick or ailing, whether it's an injury, a physical injury, whether it's COVID, whether they're fighting some sort of other illness or virus, whether it's even an emotional illness, I'm going to pause briefly in the Hebrew. You could say the name aloud. If you know it in the Hebrew, say it in the Hebrew. If you know it in the English or the Yiddish or the Farsi, say that as well. Just, Chad, you can unmute everyone, and anyone here can say the names aloud. Mishaberach Abatena Raham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarkar Chavaleah Hu Yivarech Ve'yirpeit Kochlan B'Kilatenu Et Janine. Anybody else? Bekol Hamkila Hakadosh. Verkol Cholim Bekila Hakadosh Hakadosh Baruch Hu Milei Rachamim Alehem Olcham Uraptam Mishlach Merfu Shem and Shemaim Merfu Tanefesh Merfu Teguf Betosh Sharachai Shabbat Mizrok Revrok Ravo Hashta Balagaz Man Kariv and Omar Amen. May God heal quickly and fully and physically and spiritually all those amongst our community who are sick and stricken with maladies. We're now going to chant from the Haftarah. This is the longest Haftarah for any Shabbat. As I should have mentioned before if I didn't, this is Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of the song. And it's called such because there's the song the Israelites sing when they cross the Sea of Reeds victorious. And there's a song at the end of this week's Haftarah. The Haftarah takes place centuries later after the Israelite nation has conquered most of Canaan, but not all. And they're led in battle by a general called Barak with some spiritual assistance and advice and counsel from the prophetess Devorah. And they battle the better equipped and armed Canaanite army from King Yavin, led by his general Sisera. And they conquer the Canaanites by coming down Mount Tabor, which is up north, and confronting them in a wadi. And the Israelite nation, with a few of the tribes coming together, being able to overrun the Canaanite iron chariots. And the general Sisera fled, and he goes to another tribe within the Canaanite nation known as the Kenites. And the Kenites, interestingly, were believed to be descended from Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. So the Canaanites also had a spiritual connection and perhaps a loyalty to the Israelites. And one of the Kenite women, her name is Yael, and she was the wife of the Kenite leader. She allows the general Sisera into her tent. He asks for some water. He's exhausted. She gives him some milk. He falls asleep, and then she crushes his head with a tent peg right through the forehead. And she comes out and she announces to Barak and Devorah what she's done, and they sing a song of victory in thanks. So the Haftarah, if you have the Eitz Chaim Chumash, it can be found page 423. 423 is the introduction. It's from the book of Shoftim, or Judges. The Ashkenazi version is what we're going to read this morning. It's the longer version. Again, it's 423 is the introduction, and the text is Judges chapter 4, verse 4 through chapter 5, verse 31. And agreeing to chant the Haftarah for us this morning is our maftir. We're very happy to have him, Saul Waxman. Yishar kochacha. Thank you very much, Mr. Waxman. Okay, we're going to continue with we're going to continue now with the prayer for government. So I'll tell you what, I see Lenny Sussman is on. Lenny, you want to lead us in the prayer for government? In English? Lenny Sussman, would you like to lead us in the prayer for government in the English, middle of 141? I'm not hearing back. How about Amy Goldberg? Do you have the Siddur? You want to lead us in a prayer for government? Middle of 141?
You don't have that Siddur, but I have a different one. I don't know if it's the same prayer.
Well, if English is a little bit different, it's okay. A prayer for our country is a prayer for our country. Our country can always use a prayer.
Give me, I gotta find it. So I can,
Should be right after the Haftarah blessings.
Rabbi, I think it's page 148.
If you have the Sim Shalom, it's 148.
I have, Lev Shalom.
Okay. It should be after the Haftarah for Saturday mornings and festival mornings.
I'm really sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. We're happy to have you. I know you're here for Vegas Yard Site this morning.
I'm sorry. I'll find it, but go ahead.
All right, so I'll tell you what, Susan Goldman, do you want to lead us in a prayer for government?
I'm stepping for my cousin.
Thank you.
A prayer for our country, our God and God of our ancestors. We ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leader and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights of the Torah, that they may administer
Amen. And Carol Pritzker, do you want to lead us in the prayer for the modern state of Israel at the top, 149? Carol?
No, we have the book.
Oh, all right. Does Jordan have the book?
No.
Okay. Somebody else. Someone want to step in and do a prayer for the modern state of Israel? Dr. Weissman, how about you? Audrey? God, I'm getting shut out today. All right, Con Katz. It's English. Come on.
I'm passing it over to Marty.
Marty, please.
Marty, unmute yourself.
It's like a comedy of errors.
Our Father in heaven, God
And please join in singing with us, Avinu Shabashamayim. Avinu, Avinu. Amen. And we'll continue responsively with Ashrei, middle of 151. You can be seated. And Khan, why don't you lead us responsively? I think your father-in-law, Marty, would love to hear you. Ashreha, shakacha lo, ashreham, shadnai Elohav. Bechol yom avarcheka, v'alal shimcha leolam va'ed. Dor l'dor yishabach masecha, gvurotecha yagidu. Ve'zuz nortecha yomeru, gdulatacha saprana. Chanun rachum Adonai, erech apayim udol chased. Yoduch Adonai kol maasecha, v'chasidecha yivrachucha. L'hodia livnei adam gvurotav, ugvod hadar malchuto. Sobech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, zokef l'chol hakfufim. Poteach et yadecha, u'matzbiah l'chol charatzon. Karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol asher krov emet. Shomer Adonai kol avav, v'erkar shayim yashmid. V'anachnu nivarech ya be'ata be'ad olam. Hallelujah. Beautiful. Thank you very much. If everyone wants to sit back for a few minutes, and I'm just going to preach a little bit this Shabbat, mostly about the Haftorah that Saul chanted so beautifully for us. So there was an expression that was used whenever a new administration took office, mostly I think by our fathers and our grandparents, where someone was elected, perhaps a president, and they would say, is this good for the Jews or bad for the Jews. And I imagine that's still going on in the forefront of our minds whenever a new administration takes office. What's this going to mean for the Jews? And primarily, what's it going to mean for Israel? And I mention this by way of saying, especially in the world we live in today, whether it's our own country or whether it's the upheaval we see politically worldwide, I think there's a fear of support for Israel, but also what it means to be a Jew living in another country. Who are our friends and our allies, who are enemies, and who do we have to watch out for, be suspect of, be afraid of? Now, in this week's Haftarah, very long Haftarah, in many ways very beautiful, evocative, descriptive, but also very violent, we read about the war that our fledgling ancient ancestors waged against the Canaanites to try to claim more land. And again, they were at a disadvantage. They weren't as well equipped as the Canaanites. The Canaanites, in some cases, held higher ground, the hill country, the mountainsides, where we were in the valleys, the land below. And anyone who can tell you anything about strategy, military and otherwise, knows it's always better to hold the high ground. But they were led by the general Barak, who said he wouldn't go into battle without Deborah the prophetess. And of course, he had some assist from a non-Israelite woman, a Kenite woman named Jael, who killed the Canaanite general leading the battle. And as a result, they were victorious. And I think it's very interesting because this is a case where not only were there two women who were very active in the battle, very decisive in the outcome, but one of them wasn't a Hebrew. She wasn't an Israelite. Yet she still took it into her own hands to murder the Canaanite general. And the text gives reasons for that, stating how this particular tribe was aligned with the Israelite nation going back generations because they were descended from Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. And I mention that by way of saying that even though the Israelites at the time were surrounded by the 7 Canaanite nations and the foreign and full power of Egypt who had enslaved them, the Hittites up to the north, the Phoenicians, which today is, of course, modern Lebanon, who were seafaring people, the Babylonians, which is Iraq, the Assyrians, all mighty empires, and unlike them, all polytheists, all pagans. The Israelites, in certain cases, weren't always alone. There were people that they can trust, that they can ally themselves with. Going back to Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, who wasn't an Israelite, who wasn't a Hebrew, and Dafka was the high priest of the Midianites. But the Israelites weren't always alone. They did have allies. In the time of the judges, which we read about in the Haftarah, in the time of the kingdoms, Saul and David, there were people that they could trust. And what I want to say is for us today, sometimes it might seem like we're always alone. Sometimes it might seem that Israel is this small nation, the size of New Jersey, which is surrounded by a sea of hostility. And people on the far left extremes and the far right extremes of worldwide and certainly national politics who hate us. They hate us for being Jewish, they resent us, or they hate the state of Israel. But we're not always alone. We do have allies. We have to remember that. It doesn't mean it should mitigate the fact that we should still be united in our support for one another as a Jewish community, and our support for Israel, even as Jews who live in the diaspora. But we shouldn't always feel that we're alone. We shouldn't always be paranoid, because there are people out there that we can trust. There are people out there that we can ally ourselves with. And I think it's natural, by the way, anytime a new administration takes office to wonder what this is going to mean specifically for the state of Israel. And it's still very early in this new administration. So again, we don't know, right? There might be some missteps, there might be some mistakes, there might be some things that are said or done that we don't like. We know that so far it seems there is a very Jewish cabinet. And thankfully, I think in the past several administrations, whether it was Republican or Democrat, we always see Jews in cabinet positions. And I think it's a testament to how far we've come in our own adopted homeland here in the United States. But what I would always say, and this goes back to the time of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. Trust but verify. So maybe we shouldn't be too suspicious. Maybe we should always be willing to give political leaders a chance. But we want to verify this, right? It doesn't mean we always have to be on the same page with them about everything regarding Israel, but it does mean we also need to be able to lobby with the right organizations in the right way when we think Israel needs support and assist. And there are any number of wonderful organizations out there that can do that, such as AIPAC. Within our issues of the Jewish community in the United States today and some of the fears we have from far left and far right extremists, that's why you have organizations like the ADL and even the UJA to support our Jewish community. So we have to be able to work together as a people, and we also have to be able to know to whom we can turn in our elected officials, in the legal and security apparatus of our country, in order to nurture the support that we need. And while we should always be willing to give any new administration a chance, and I believe that as a rabbi, it doesn't mean we give a pass. We're always willing to give a chance, but not a pass. So that means being able to work for the support that we need and the protection that we need, both for ourselves and for Israel when necessary, and knowing which organizations to work with and partner with. I look forward to this new year of 2021. We all know 2020 had its significant challenges. And like I said, we hope and pray that this will be for a better year. We still have a number of obstacles and challenges to try to overcome. It won't happen if we turn against one another. It won't happen if we're afraid to raise our voices when necessary, but of course raise them in the right way, in the right conditions. And I do think that this year can and should be a much better year. We just have to remember to work together and to be able to work with those who we know can support us and will support us, and not to forget to also support them when necessary. So just a thought and a wish that I want to leave you with on this Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. And I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish, page 155, which introduces the Musaf Amidah. Saul, are you ready to lead us? Okay, thank you very much. Amen. Page 156b, the Amidah from Musaf. Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Yisrael, Eloheinu Baruch Hu. We continue down silently in the Hebrew and English to page 161. Page 181, Kaddish Shalem. Amen. Amen. Brecho. Amen. 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 And Ein Keloheinu, page 182. Ein Kemoshienu. And we rise, all of us together, for Aleinu. During this week, I'd like to mention that we recall with fondness Faggy Goldberg. And I don't have the full list with me of everyone else who has a yard site in the coming week, but... You thought? Bet Ezra. Does anyone else have a name they'd like me to mention? So we continue now with the Mourner's Kaddish, page 184. All those in mourning or observing a yahrzeit, please join me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'me'ol ma'yah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudashah brechu le'ila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imeru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Before we conclude, just a couple of brief announcements. I want to thank Saul Waxman for leading us in the chanting of the Haftarah and for Musaf. I want to thank Robert Yagane, who came this morning. Thank you for being here. Everyone who zoomed on with us, thank you very much. Tomorrow morning services are 9:30 a.m. and 6:15 Sunday through next Friday. Monday through Friday will be 8:30 a.m. I don't know what will be with the snowstorm that we're predicting with Sunday night into Monday. If it's bad, there is a chance the office and the synagogue could be closed, but that wouldn't preclude us from still having services since we'd be zooming on regardless. Next Friday at 4:45, there is a special Zoom service for the nursery school families. And one thing I just wanted to mention last, when I was talking before about my sermon, one of the things that we find a very disturbing trend on college campuses, and I'm guessing it exists elsewhere as well, is this concept of intersectionality. It was started originally in the 90s as a different idea, but what it's taken place is that a number of groups, minority groups, ethnic groups, what have you, have gotten together, and in some cases they've been co-opted by anti-Israel forces who have said, we'll sign on to your platform supporting you if you sign on to ours, right? If you help us introduce or pass a resolution on a college campus condemning Israel or boycotting Israel, BDS, we'll support you, whether it's Black Lives Matter, Native American Student Association, Asian American Student Association, LGBTQ, and it's been very successful in many cases in a number of academic institutions throughout North America, and I imagine throughout Europe as well. So that's what I mentioned before, is that's something that we have to tap into ourselves, right? If we want people to support us as Jews, whether here or in another country, if we want people to support Israel as probably the only true democracy in all of the Middle East, then we also have to be able to work with other organizations and other groups. And I think it was APAC who had a man named Bakari Sellers speak here last fall of 2019, when they did their Long Island dinner. And Bakari Sellers is African American, and he's worked with a number of political organizations. And he said, I support Israel. I support Israel as a democracy. I'm willing to speak in synagogues. I'm willing to speak to Jewish organizations. But if you want my support, if you want the support of other people like me who represent African Americans in Congress and African Americans in political organizations or aligned with Black Lives Matter, then we need your support in our endeavors, in our pursuits. And it's true. So again, as Jewish people, it's something that we have to look out for. We've never shied away from politics, but I think all the more so, everything has become more nuanced with identity politics. And it's sometimes a very fine line we have to tread, but we have to know nevertheless how to thread it if we're going to garner the support that we need. So just something that I want to wish you with, yes. And Shabbat Shalom, that concludes my remarks. We are going to do Don Olam, and then we'll do a quick Kiddush over here. And if you want to raise a glass of wine or grape juice in your own home to join us for Kiddush, please feel free. Also, the next hearing, Men's Voices, will take place Thursday, February 11th at 7:45 p.m. over Zoom. But Saul, do you want to pick the tune for Don Olam, page 187?
Paul, can you unmute?
Saul, unmute. Chad, can you unmute Saul? Hello, Ira. Please join us for Kiddush and Hamotzi. Well, Kiddush at least. Robert, you want to join us? Bnei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Ledoratam Berit Olam Beni Yevaim Bnei Yisrael Oti Leolam Oti Leolam Oti Leolam Vishamru Bnei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat ledoratam berit olam ki shesh shamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz vishamru bnei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat ledoratam berit olam uv'yom hashvi shavat vayinafash Shavat vayinafash vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית העולם. זכור יום השבת לקודשו, 6 ימים תבוא ועשית כל מלאכתך, ויום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך, לא תעשה בכל מלאכה, אטוי בנך ובתך, עבדך ואמתך והמתך, וגרך אשר בישרך, כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ואת הים ואת כל אשר בם, וינח ביום השביעי, על כן ברך אדוני ביום הקדוש וקדשהו, שרי אמר רבותי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, Bore Peri Hagafen. And let's conclude by singing Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Please turn to the person on the screen above you, say Shabbat Shalom. Below you say Shabbat Shalom. To the left of you say Shabbat Shalom. To the right of you say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and to stay warm. Shabbat Shalom. Yosef, Shabbat Shalom. Please say hi to Azita. Please say hi to your children. My pleasure. How's Justin doing, by the way? Shabbat Shalom. Stay safe and healthy. Tell him I miss him. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Gesundheit. Hey. See you all tomorrow morning. I hope stay safe, stay healthy.